So, I got a G3 recently, and I saw online that there's not a lot of English reviews about them, so here is my English review of the VFC G3. This SF gun is almost an exact replica of the real thing except for the bolt assembly, because obviously it fires BBs instead of bullets. If you ever use the real thing, the first thing you will notice, and you might be shocked about this, is it's actually, like, it's very light. There's barely any weight to it. In comparison, of course. The second thing you'll notice is how light the bolt pull is. So, to start off, yeah, if you know, you know. And yeah, it's so light I can even use my pinky. I mean, still sounds dramatic, but it's still just not quite there. You can still do the HK slap with this thing, that it's absolutely fine. But there is quite an important detail with how this gun works, which goes completely against the real one, and you need to know about it to save yourself some hassle. So how the G3 works is, it's not like an AR that locks on empty. So even when you fired your last bullet, this will always happen. The hammer will always strike, basically alerting you to the fact that your magazine and your chamber are both out of ammo. On the airsoft variant here, VFC did a little bit of magic to the magazines to try and simulate this, but it's not quite there yet. Basically, the gun will keep shooting until there's no magazine. Basically, the gun will keep shooting until there's no BBs in the magazine left. However, there is a BB in this chamber right now. So we take an empty magazine, and there is gas inside, and we just try to fire it. It doesn't shoot. And the reason for that is basically because the silver piece there is basically what's hitting the valve. The actual valve is all the way here. This basically just acts as a lever, and the hammer pushes this. But this lever sits off to the side when the mag is empty, so it doesn't fire. When you have a loaded magazine, it sits in the middle, but you have to press it to the middle for it to shoot. So this works fine, but you just need to remember the fact that when you load a new magazine, there is already a BB in the chamber, so you shouldn't rack the bolt again to load another one, because then you'll get a double feed. And you want to keep these spare parts as protected as you can, because believe me, it is hard to find them. So just to demonstrate, there is one BB in this chamber now, and there are two BBs in this magazine. So if we just rack it back so it's cocked, and then we put the loaded magazine in, and I'm a little scared of doing this in the house, but hey ho, video is a video. Empty. So, what's happening here? Mag is empty. So, something funny just happened to me mid-review. Turns out, everything I said before about the mags was wrong. It works exactly like the real thing. It fired the last BB in the chamber. Okay, after that magazine hiccup, I'm just going to go on to spare parts. So, spare parts. They are almost impossible to find for this gun online. I did have this issue with the nozzle, where it would load BBs into the chamber, but they wouldn't shoot. Like, basically, so the gun was firing. It was firing just fine, but the BBs would not shoot out of the end, so no... nothing was happening. Turns out what had happened was, I don't know if the gas maybe just pushed it all the way forward, I don't know, but the end pass inside the nozzle jammed at the far front of the nozzle, and it blocked any gas from getting out of the nozzle where it was supposed to go. I took it apart, I fixed the end pass back up, I did lose the nozzle pin while doing it, but turns out you can use a high kappa feeding lip pin, and it works just fine. if it works, it works, right? So there you go. So I put it back together. It's now shooting around 2 joules on 4/8. You can actually get it shooting up to 4 joules, but I don't know why you would want to get this gun shooting at 4 joules. Like, no field anywhere is going to let you play with 4 joules. Might be fun for target shooting, but yeah. Stick with 2. You only need 2. Alright, let's talk about the trigger. This is one thing I don't like about the gun. When we were in the military, obviously they told us, you know, find the reset and then go from there. Basically, they called it a wall. In Greek, I think it's the ticho. So, here's what I mean. I'm holding the trigger. We rack the gun. And when I want to reset it, it just travels forward on its own, basically. Like, it kind of wants to push my finger forward. So I'm releasing, and there's the reset. Okay, now, this will be fine if that reset was the actual wall, the ticho, right? But it's not the wall. In fact, there is no wall on this thing. So, on the real one, there is the wall, but not on this one. On this, you just pull, and then it just breaks. Like, I'm pulling, still no wall, and still pulling. Yeah, like, it's just not there. Like, see, I'm used to this wall. Yeah, see, it just breaks. I don't know if there is a mod for this. The information on the internet is very, very scarce. Maybe we can figure it out one day. Disassembly is actually incredibly easy. It's just like the real thing. Pins, no tools needed. You just pull pins out. Take that out. Then there's a pin for the trigger. And then that comes out just like the real thing. Handguard also is a pin. Yeah, and then bolt just falls out. It's that simple. Now, in most cases, that is as far as you need to go in the gun. If you need to get in the chamber for whatever reason, you would need to untighten this screw. And then you unscrew the front barrel here. So you unscrew this comes off, and then you would just push this downwards. Then the hop chamber comes out this end here. I actually didn't plan on showing that part. I really thought that this would have still had some screw glue, but apparently I didn't use enough. So I did this complete disassembly once. I wanted to put a Modify X-Range 70-degree bucking inside. Shoots great. I wanted to hop 4/8. And on the 2 occasions where I did manage to shoot the gun before it started having its impasse problems, it shot perfectly fine. It was great. But the test was very short-lived. One thing I should note, the hop adjustment tool. It's right here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's here and it's rotary. But you can do it by hand. Now, you do need to take the handguard off when you want to do this. You don't have to take the whole gun apart like I have, obviously, but you would just need to take the handguard off from here, do the adjustments. It's not a great system. I wish there was a better one, but I do appreciate that you don't need a tool to do it. Like, it's a minor inconvenience, but it's not a nuisance. Okay, now, let's put this thing back together. One thing I should note, because I have seen people do this and they've broken their triggers like this, put your bolts back in first. Do not do anything when putting this thing back together other than putting the bolt in first. Now, why should you do that? Because this trigger, the hammer sits up, it protrudes like this, and that protrudes so that it can hit the bolt there. Now, what happens if you put the trigger in first, and then you drop the bolt in. Triggers like this, you drop the bolt in, and then suddenly it's going bop. You know, so it's... I'm not sure what material this hammer is made from, but it's held up longer than WE. I'll give it that. But yeah, just don't do it like this. This is a very good way to break the trigger. And like I said before, you want to keep these parts intact for as long as you possibly can. So, body, bolt, always first, always. Alright, so, reassembly, super easy. Just basically put everything back where you found it. One more thing I have to add about the assembly of the gun, the butt plate. Just super glue this thing on. This thing falls off so easy. At the tiniest bump, it kind of just slips off and then falls away. Just super glue it. Trust me, you don't need to ever get into this thing for any reason whatsoever. You just don't need to do it. Super glue it and forget about it. Magazines. Oh boy, magazines. These things, they cost 60 euros a piece, or at least they cost me 60 euros a piece. They hold about 20 to 25 magazines in total. They are very, very big in the hands, like they are quite beefy. You can do tactical reloads with them, but you need big hands for this. So, to demonstrate, and okay, you've done your shot. Grab it from the bottom, and you need 3 fingers. You need these 3 fingers available, okay? So, you grab the mag, you pull the release, pull it out, and then it's that simple. It takes a bit of practice at first, but you can get there. Ah, Christ. The gun is actually heavy, to be honest with you. I mean, it's by no means like the real thing, but... Okay, let's do it. Not from the shoulder, but let's say from the workspace. So, that's how you do a tactical reload. Like I said, it takes practice. But, yeah. This is partly due to the fact that the magazines themselves are quite awkward to load. Like, it's not like ARs, where you just do a straight up load. Because then it locks like that, and it's not even in yet. And then you have to do like a wiggle, basically. Best way to do it in a singular smooth motion is just AK style. So this also needs a bit of practice. The magazines, just like on the real thing, they are awkward as hell to load. They don't always go in on the first try, but with a bit of practice, you make the process a bit easier. One thing I discovered on this is sometimes when you want to take the mag out, you would pull the mag release like this, and then it just locks. You can't remove it. In this case, okay, it's moving, but it would just stay there no matter how you pull it, and then you kind of have to give it a nudge and then carry on with it again. What I did was the mechanism in here, I just cleaned it out a bit with rubbing alcohol, and then I just put a teeny bit of silicone grease in it. I don't really know why that fixes it, but it did in this case. Like all my spare magazines, they all had this issue of locking into the magwell. Now it's just fine. Now it's perfectly. Okay, last but not least, optics. So, when you look at the G3 for the first time, you would probably think, there's no option for rails. How can you even mount an optic on this? But truth is, you can. This here is a rail. It's a Picatinny rail. So this thing I got from Bugatti in Germany. I'm not sponsored or anything. It's just the only place I found one that didn't break the bank. I think I paid 10 euros for this thing, and it works just fine. It's short, but that's all I needed. There are these little locking tabs, or lugs, or whatever you would call them, like here for the rails. I don't know if you can see properly, but it basically just clamps on, and it's secure. It's not going anywhere. Like, you secure it with screw heads. I don't know if you can see them, but yeah, you just screw it into place. That's never gonna move, and then you just slap whatever optic you want on top of it. I don't think you're gonna get a huge sniper scope on it, but if you're doing a DMR build, you don't need to run a huge scope on it, to be honest. Okay, so to conclude, I didn't have to do a serious amount of work to this gun. It's had its problems, but they were solvable. They weren't, you know, they weren't super bad, like with the Scar I had, where I had to do so much. I had to replace the bocking, the inner barrel, the trigger, the selector switches. This thing, it's fine. The lack of spare parts, it's a problem, but if you look after the gun, it's fine. I will probably need to replace the inner barrel for this thing at some point, but it's a nice to have, not a need to have, so that's the end. I'm done. Empty. So, what's happening here? Mag is empty. Okay, I was completely wrong. It turns out it works exactly like the real thing. The chamber is empty, there's not a BB in there, the mag is empty, both mags are empty, and I can just consider this whole video done. Oh my god, I can't believe it, I'm such an idiot. I scripted this whole video trying to explain that this thing doesn't work like the real thing and it'll teach you bad habits, but it turns out it works exactly like the real thing. Oh my god. Okay, we can consider this done now. Bye bye.